The Ghost of the Old Woman. I never used to believe in ghosts. I loved watching those ghost chaser shows like Ghost Hunters and things like that. Although yesterday I was playing Far Cry 3 and, well, let's just say something happened. I've already beaten the game, and don't worry if you haven't, I won't spoil any of the main story for you. So I went around the island and looked for side missions. I found one that was inside a hut near a village, and I walked in. There was an old lady inside. I talked to her, and she started getting all frantic, and she yelled out, "So much violence! It makes me so scared." Jason, the main character you play as, said, "Is there something wrong?" "At first I thought it was thunder, and then I looked outside and saw a plane. It was on fire and heading toward the ground. Everyone said I was hallucinating or just making it up, but I saw it." "All right. How can I help?" "Go check for survivors. They may be dying. They may be dead." "I'll see what I can do." After that, I headed out and followed the mission marker to the location of a rusted and broken down plane. I looked around and saw nothing. No people, no fire, no smoke. Nothing at all. In fact, it looked like the plane had been there for a while. Then the mission marker pointed me toward a shack on the beach. I followed it, and a man on the beach was cooking some food. "Well, hello there," he said. "I was just making dinner. Care to join me?" "Sorry, but I was wondering about that plane. Some old lady who lives in the village told me that plane crashed here," Jason said. "Well, that plane has been there for 10 years now, and there's no old lady who lives in that village." I took a second to think about that, and then I realized, 10 years. Old lady not really there. She was a ghost. I thought, wow, that's a cool Easter egg. And I know you may be thinking, oh, I've played that mission. I don't really get why you're writing this. Well, because that's not all that happened. Something else happened after I was done with that mission. I got bored after a while and went to go take over an enemy base. I searched the whole base to locate all the enemies around the area. As I did, something popped up in the very corner of the screen. I saw what looked like an old woman. When I hovered the camera over her, it marked her as an enemy. That was strange because the enemies are all young men, and usually old women are civilians. Whatever the case, I pulled out my bow and started taking out the guys. They got alerted and ran off to go search for me. As they did, I walked around and evaded them to go to the old woman and see why she was there. I snuck up behind her and tried to do a takedown. Jason ran up with his knife and stabbed through her. The weird thing was that there was no blood, and after Jason backed out, the woman was still standing up. Then the most terrifying thing in my entire life happened to me. The woman's head spun 180 degrees and looked me in the eyes, and I don't mean Jason. It felt like she was looking at me. "You found them, right? They were alive," she spoke in a soft tone. It was the old woman from the side quest. Jason didn't respond. He simply stood there. "Did you find them?" she asked. I knew now she wasn't talking to Jason. She was talking to me. No," I said in a slightly shaky tone. The screen went black and into a loading screen, but the only thing on it was, "You had one mission, and you failed." It loaded to a grayscale world, and I had no weapons. There were only a few trees and a little watchtower structure in front of me. The rest of the world was fenced off. Why didn't you save them?" The old woman's voice rung in my ears, but there was no sight of her. I walked around the area and tried to jump over the fence, but I couldn't. I started to wonder if this was a part of the mission. But if that's the case, why can't I do anything? She appeared in front of me, and her eyes were filled with tears. The world's colors returned, but they were very darkened, not as lively as the normal game. "What is your name, child?" Again I knew she was talking to me. Mitch?" "Mitch," she repeated. At this point, I reached to push the power button on my PS3. "Don't!" she screamed. I stopped in fear. "Good," she continued. "You need to repay me for not saving those people." I shouted back at her. "There was no one there! You're not even real! You're a fucking video game!" She pulled out Jason's machete. "If I'm not real." She stabbed Jason. I could feel the pain in my own stomach. I looked down to see a giant stab wound in my body. I was too shocked to scream. The pain made me too paralyzed to move. "Now, for every person you failed, instead of one of Jason's tattoos, you'll get scars." Another loading screen in the game then showed a text. "If you try to turn off the game, I will cut off your fingers. If you try to run, I'll cut off your legs. If you try to scream, I'll cut off your tongue." My mind was drowning in feeling of fear and confusion. How was this happening? Why was this happening? How am I going to get out? The loading screen faded off, and I was now in the game again, but the sky was all black and the land was on fire. The woman appeared again in front of me. "Now, because you failed to save the passengers on the plane." She lashed out her machete and cut my forehead. Blood was running down it, and it stung like a bitch. I grabbed my mouth to not scream at risk of losing my tongue. "Now, you need to go and kill a slave trader up the hill," she said. Can I have a weapon?" My voice was shaky and low in tone. I was afraid, very afraid. She gave me the pistol you get on the start of the game. "That's all you get. Now, go." I didn't even want to try and argue. I ran off to where the mission marker now pointed, but this time it was a skull instead of a normal yellow dot. The man was standing in a little rundown shack with snipers all around. I carefully attempted to sneak around and stab on the snipers, but I forgot. The old woman stole my knife, so I quickly attempted to hide in a bush, but one of them saw me. I was quickly shot to death, and it said, "Mission failed. Prepare for a new mark." The loading screen finished loading, and it sent me back to her. "You failed again." She held out the machete and screamed at the top of her lungs as she cut my forehead. I held my head. "Please, I'm sorry," she yelled. "You're sorry? Next time don't fail." Suddenly a bolt of lightning flashed outside my window and the power went out. I grabbed a flashlight and looked around my room. Nothing. I was safe. The rest was mostly a blur. I turned the power back on, but after that I can't remember. The next morning I woke up and it was sunny out. Everything was all bright and lively outside. I got up and went to the bathroom to wash my face. "Damn, what a terrible nightmare," I said to myself. I looked up, and in the mirror staring back at me was my face, with 10 horrifying scars all over it, and standing behind me was the old woman with the machete in her hand, smiling the most terrifying smile.